Entonces prefería cogerlo y llevarlo por la mañana. Y así, si la gente después se atrasaba y eso, no lo jodían a él. Porque si se atrasan, entonces viene alguien atrás de él y va a estarla presionándolo. Y él, él cogió las de 9:30 a 11:30.
De la noche.
De la mañana.
De la mañana. Porque a esa hora casi no hay nadie.
Sí, ya ese es el primer que hay.
Pues es un dominio que se va a abrir.
Sí, ellos viven ahora ahí en Lawrence, New Jersey, por la ruta 1. Hay un Costco por ahí atrás. Yo no sé si tú sabes, está Quaker Bridge Mall.
Yo sé.
Can you guys hear me? Can anyone hear me?
Yes.
You can?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, great. Because I have a new computer and I'm having trouble with my Zoom. And as long as someone can hear me, I am good. Okay.
Yeah, we can hear you.
All right, good. So I'm going to just start. Can you see me?
No.
Oh, I like to see how I can.
At first I could, but now I can't. Now I can see you.
Okay, good. All right. I'm not sure what I'm all doing because
not anymore though.
Why did it go away? Start video. Allow access settings. You can't see me?
No.
Trying to get this to work. I know there's 3 of you here. So
It's working now.
Well, it goes away for some reason. It goes away. I don't know why it does.
Yeah, it just did now again.
Well, anyway, I'm not really sure what's. Can you see me now?
No.
I don't know why it keeps going away. Let's see, it says more recording. Well, anyway, I have some of you here, and I guess the audio will have to do from the looks of it. And I just wanted to touch bases with the ones that could meet today. I thought that a lot more people could meet today and than the 3 that I have. I think I have 3 people. Yeah. I don't know why. I'm just trying to see if I can. But I don't know if you can see me now.
No, just for a few seconds, but it went away again.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway, I wanted to talk about how we're doing in general, and I wanted to talk a little bit about normative aging, and I wanted to talk a little bit about Alzheimer's, and I wanted to talk a little bit about cancer. I'm not going to get real deep into all of this, but I think it's worth spending some time talking about some of these things in a course that deals with aging and that deals with this kind of notion. Okay, all right. So I guess I'm gonna ask if you have any questions thus far. What are they? Do you have any questions that you would like to have some answers to?
No, not for the moment.
No?
Mhm.
Anybody else? No? Okay. Well, the chapter that deals with normative aging, I think it's 3 and 4, talk a little bit about some of the theories. What are, for the, as you've been reading that, which one stands out and seems to be one that explains to you um, um, what aging is all about? What do you think?
Is it like the evolutionary theory?
Okay. And what do you think that offers? What might be one point that you think that offers you?
Um, well, the only thing that comes to my mind right now is like how we go through the process of adolescence, like young adult, and then like the aging process. Um, but yeah, that's the only thing that comes to my mind right now, honestly.
So the developmental process of humans in terms of getting larger, bigger, if you will, becoming more complex, if you will. Uh, I guess moving forward from being a simple being that needs a lot of care, a lot of social care. Humans don't do well by themselves. If I put a human baby in the forest, leave them there, what's likely to happen to them? Well, not much, right? I mean, they're not gonna do well, if you will. They're going to um, probably die, right? They need, not only do they need food, but they need warmth, they need care, and they need to be in some way taken from one place to the other if they're going to. So that's part of human nature. So the interesting thing about it is that we go from being very needy, if you will, psychologically, politically, emotionally needy individuals. And I don't mean it in a bad sense. I just mean it that we need others. We cannot, in any real way, go at it alone, if you will. That we need that, and that's why we are communal group. Human no, humanoids need others. I know that we tell people that you have to be independent, and that's true. You do need to develop some sense of independence, but you don't go it alone in a way that you can survive well without that. So we need to uh, be able to be fed early on. We need to be able to get an education to learn what the world is all about. And then later on, um, working and getting together with others in terms of getting together in terms of developing family, if you will. And at the end, we go back and we kind of become more like a child we were. That's my theory. What do you think of that? No thoughts? No? Okay. Well, Um, so, so, so one of the things that I think is important is the theories on aging suggest that there might be a genetic component to it. The tetramers, the elongation of them might have something to do with that. And so scientists study that to see that if they get shorter, it becomes a problem. Okay, so that's one. The other theory has to do with the human, the physical itself, that we've become weaker, that our brain becomes weaker, that our skin becomes weaker, that we have issues with all of that. And so that may have something to do with it, that maybe that's genetically predetermined and programmed into us. Okay, so that's part of the theories. We don't know exactly what it is, but we do know that human beings, just like other beings, tend to age, if you will, and there's probably a lot to be said for the genetic components, if you will, and also because if we don't take care of ourselves, our bodies, and I say that in terms of human beings, from eating, people who are stressed, people who don't eat well, people who don't exercise, tend to age a little bit more earlier, if you will, than others who do. Okay, so that's part of what I think we should be getting from this. Okay, so I wanted to talk about that a little bit. So, what might be things that help us live longer? What are some things that you think that you've learned that might help you with this notion of being able to extend your personal life? Anybody have any thoughts on that?
I guess what we consume and like our living habits or where we're around, surrounded by.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. So, so yeah, there's a lot of talk about people who eat high fatty food, for example, right? Can you see me now?
Yes.
I don't know why it goes on and off. It went on its own for some reason. I just thought that's kind of weird. I don't know what's happening with the Zoom itself. Anyway, um, so eating fatty food tends to clog the arteries, right? And so if arteries are clogged, that means that less blood and less oxygen and less nutrition is getting around into our body. And so people whose arteries are clogged, and we've gotten pretty good at unclogging these things that are called stents, are put into people's hearts and into the veins. They're opened up. Even artificial things such as bypasses, where if an artery is really damaged, you can actually bypass that area and connect another part down the road, if you will, in that artery, so that people can live better lives, if you will. They can survive the arteries being clogged. And medical advances have been pretty dramatic in that way. I know that you know that on average, people didn't live beyond 50 back in the 1800s, and those who lived longer had some sort of exceptional biology, maybe their lifestyle, without them realizing it, was exceptional. Like maybe they exercised a lot, which is a thing that is important for aging. If people stay active, um, they'll tend to live longer, statistically speaking, about 10-20% longer, if you will. That's what the study seems to suggest. So if you walk if you do weightlifting, that's weight bearing, that resistance, if you will. Not necessarily lifting weights that are super heavy, but lifting weights that help you. I'm doing maybe sit-ups, push-ups, and things of that nature. Stretching, like doing yoga, is a useful thing and something that helps people stay toned, if you will. And I think it helps because it helps the muscles kind of stay stronger and metabolize oxygen and get good nutrition. So that I think those are things that are helpful. So doing yoga and Tai Chi type stuff, and that is helpful. My wife's grandfather, grandfather lived a lot longer than most of the other family, and I used to watch him doing yoga type stuff while he would visit us, and so he lived well into his 90s, and the only reason that he passed on some years later was because he got an infection, which is a problem for people, if you will. But so exercise, eating well, okay, and dealing with stress, which we don't do often well. So if you look at stress, let's just talk briefly about stress. Stress is, is it real stress or is it perceived stress, right? So most of us have, I think, perceived stress. We think that we have to do this, or we have to do that, or this has to happen this way, or this is the way things should be, and if it doesn't happen that way, I'm not going to be happy. So the way we perceive it, in some way, is connected with it causing things that physically occur. And we have plenty of psychological, biological evidence to suggest that when we think of things, we make things happen, if you will. So, psychological health is very important to if we are going to live long enough. So biology, whatever you're dealt with, whatever cards you're given, you can elongate them by taking care of yourself in some ways. And we've mentioned eating, so fruits, vegetable, antioxidants, if you will, like blueberries, are been shown to be helpful from that. So if you eat fruits and vegetables and less red meat, not that you don't eat meat, but that you eat less meat than oftentimes we eat. If you take in fruit, vegetables, that's helpful. The other thing that's come is the Mediterranean diet, that's so-called Mediterranean diet. And what that is that you eat certain foods that are rich in omega antioxidants, if you will, omega-3, and they even sell they sell vitamins that you can take like that. But if you eat fish, cold water fish, if you will, and there's plenty of that macro, and if you eat codfish and you eat scallops, and you eat stuff like that, these things tend to have not just this nutrient, but have a lot of other nutrients that tend to be helpful and help you stay well. So I think that some of those things will help you, if you eat those things, that will help you. The other things that I think are important is if you are getting older, if you will, and if you start taking multivitamins early on, you're going to be in better shape. And one of the things that most doctors don't do, because doctors when they see people and they see older people, what they're doing is just giving them meds in many ways. That's my biased opinion, and I think that's an easy way to help people. But if you give them and you tell them that they need to take like multivitamins, that's going to go a long way by making sure that they get the vitamins that they need. And what vitamins do is they take the food that you're eating, and if you're eating a well-balanced meal, the vitamins will enhance the possibility of that nutrition getting into your body and helping you a bit better. So those are some things that I think have been known to help people. The other thing that elongates life is if you continue your education, if you will. So I don't mean that you get an advanced degree. I mean that you read, you listen to music, you stay involved in learning ideas and trying to stay actively curious, if you will, about different things. You might take a course in let's say astronomy, even though it may be a non-science. Because why? That's something unusual, and what that does is that it creates more interneuronal connections, and it helps those things happen and stay with us. Okay, so that's part of what I think is important. If you read, and we have evidence, scientific evidence, that those people who have a higher level of education on average lived a little bit longer than those who don't. Okay, and what I'm suggesting is that education is a good thing that we should get, and not that you need to stay in school forever, but if you stay engaged in reading and studying and thinking and being inquisitive and being active and staying active with others, that will help your life be better. Okay, so what are we doing here? I'm hoping that what I'm doing here is giving you some tidbits on things that you can do for yourself. Okay, right? And I still have those who are with me. I think I see now 5. Very good, very good. So what else can we say, or what else could you say that you plan on doing to enhance your life so that you can stay living longer, if you will? Anybody have a thought on that?
Being active.
Being active, right? So walking, right? And we know that being active and walking is one of those things that you can do to stay active. If you walk a half hour to 40 minutes every other day, that's going to help your mind to stay fresh. It's going to help your body get oxygen and clean out things that are toxic in your body, if you will. It will help your breathing. And normally, let me say this, we talk about keeping our heart in good shape. Of course, that's true. But technically speaking, and in general, whatever is good for the heart is good for the brain. And whatever is good for the brain is good for the heart. And walking and eating well and staying engaged with others and doing things like that are helpful. Okay, thank you, thank you. Anybody else have anything else that they plan on doing to stay active, if you will? And maybe you have an activity that you think you should do or can do. Hmm. Hmm. Anybody else? No? All right. All right. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Alzheimer's because I think Alzheimer's is a disease that a lot of people that take a course on aging want to know about. Okay. And believe it or not, we don't know as much as we would like to. We know actually very little about it. We do know that the way Alzheimer's was sort of discovered, if you will, or that came to be, was that back in the 1900s, in 1906, more or less, a person named Alois Alzheimer was working with young students, if you will, youngsters. And he discovered that um, in the brain of these people, there were these tangles, okay, these plackets. And since then, we've discovered that what happens in some of the people, many of the people, is that the neurons tend to lose their neuronness, and that they're actually sort of like little holes, black holes, things disintegrate in the brain. And so they're little plackets that are, I guess, solids, if you will, in the brain of Alzheimer brains, if you will. And so we've discovered that. And as you know, neurons don't get replaced. What the brain does, as we've been studying, is this whole notion of plasticity. So the brain does learn to route itself, okay? And reroute the things that it does to other neurons, and other neurons and other parts of the brain take over. So plasticity is a good thing. Well, the good thing about knowing about this is that we know that in the brain, plasticity occurs, and it happens that the more neurons you might have in your brain, the better off you're going to be. And so the more neurons you have, and the more interconnections that you can develop by what? Eating well, by exercising. And the earlier you do that in life, the better it is. My mother-in-law was telling me, I was talking to her about exercising, and she was telling me she was going to start walking and walking down the road for a little bit, and she's going to start doing different things. And she always says she's going to, and she doesn't do many of them. But I was telling her about it, and she says, well, you need to start doing that early, a lot earlier than today. And I told her, well, later is better than not at all. Okay. And so she was telling me that she's going to do it. And, it's not easy because what? For people as they're aging, their body might hurt, their feet might hurt. They may not have good wind capacity. They may get tired easy, and so on. So for us who are studying this and thinking about this notion of how to help ourselves, please start to do some of it. I challenge you to do it. I force myself to walk every other day. And even if I don't want to, I make myself do that. Okay. And when I go to the refrigerator, I look for food that is high in antioxidants that can help me. And I've cut down personally myself things that are high in fat. I've cut down on things that create sugar, because sugar, diabetes, is a disease that really is very serious for the elderly. Okay, so and I'm actually doing different things. I've given up using things that can create cholesterol in my body. So let me say something about sugar, because I mentioned it. Sugar is one of the most pervasive and chronic diseases. And what we want to do is eliminate them, or keep them at bay, or push them further into the future. And the things that we've been talking about are things that actually do that, okay? Chronic diseases, diseases that exists in us 3 months and above is the technical way of looking at it. We can in some way push them into the future, if you will, by eating well. I mentioned all the seafood. Seafood diets are good in general. Eating chicken, less red meat, those are good things. Eating vegetables and eating fruit is very good for you. We don't tend to do that because we're a fast-paced society. A lot of people eat things that create for them high sugar. Eating things with sugar, artificial sugar, is no good. Okay, for sugar, first of all. The other thing is that things like milk and things that like cheeses and all that, they turn into sugar in the system. And diabetes is what? When the body cannot get rid of or process that sugar. So one of the things that you could do is cut down on milk. I use half and half. Yeah, I happen to like coffee, so I drink coffee a lot most of the day. Don't recommend coffee for everyone, but I like drinking coffee. But I stopped using milk, and I use half and half. That when I go for my test shows that my sugar intake has really plummeted. Okay, has plummeted. So not eating bread and cookies, and most of us like to eat sweets and all of that, and unfortunately that's part of it. So I wanted to say that about things that you could do. Okay, all right, so getting back to Alzheimer's. Okay, so what is all this about? Well, the way Alzheimer's seems to work is that, you know how when you were born, you do certain things, you start eating and taking in food, and then eventually you get to see and you get to walk, and you need to do you get to do all these kind of things in that way. Well, the way Alzheimer's comes to be is that it's just the opposite. People lose mobility, they lose language, they lose thinking. They Alzheimer's operates opposite to the way that naturally people um, um, developed as human beings. So that's the thing that happens. It also may be that Alzheimer's comes to be, there may be a genetic component that times it, but moreover, there may be something called um, uh, nerve growth factor, if you will, okay? That in some way is lacking in people that get Alzheimer's, okay? And it probably is true that if we live long enough, we may get Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's is a disease, if you will, or something that happens to people that are 85, 90, 95 and above. So it's a much older group, if you will, that get Alzheimer's. Okay, so I wanted to say that. We don't know what really causes it. There are correlations that we can draw. Okay, all right. Age is definitely one of them. Like I've said, 85 and above. So that's about half the people that are in long care facilities have some sort of Alzheimer's or dementia. The two are really connected. There is a little bit of a correlation in family, and that is if brothers and sisters or uncles or close relatives had Alzheimer's, if you will, which, it's hard to always identify if that's what they had or not. you'll have a smaller percentage. It's a small percentage, about 4% possibility up that you'll have Alzheimer's. Okay, so family history, it's not straightforward, but it is part of that. There is a genetic thing that's been discovered called APOE, A-P-O large E. It's a genetic chemical in about 15% of people that get Alzheimer's. So you can only do some testing, and testing for Alzheimer's is not good. I just had a couple of points that I wanted to make that I jotted down, so I would remember to make them. Get it? Remember to make them. So anyway, and that's the other thing that people that get Alzheimer's tend to forget things. And it is difficult because people that know them and love them and care for them realize that they may not know them. My wife had at least one uncle and one aunt that had Alzheimer's, and it was very debilitating, and they didn't remember even their children. So Alzheimer's is a serious disease, but if we take care of ourselves, we can push that into the future. So the more healthier you are, and the more things you do to help yourself age gracefully, if you will, the better it is. Okay. So what else did I want to say about that? People with Alzheimer's not only lose memory, but they also lose their balance. They lose their capacity to abstract think, their personality judgment. The worst personality parts of them tend to be accented as they move forward with the disease. They are not able to move well, okay? They're not able to coordinate any type of action, okay? They lose those abilities in reverse order to the way they're developed in human beings, I guess, okay? So there is something to be said about taking care of yourself, okay? They tend to need a lot of care, if you will, and so that is difficult toward the very end. Okay. What else did I want to say about that? Are there any good news about Alzheimer's? Well, not as much as I would like to say, but the good thing about it is this. Not everyone who is thought to have Alzheimer's might have Alzheimer's, if you will. We're not gotten to the stage where we could test it firmly. Other things that mimic Alzheimer's that oftentimes is missed and that people think is Alzheimer's is that someone might have depression. And I had a friend who was telling me a story about a fella who the children thought their father had Alzheimer's, so they decided that they were going to put him in a long-term care facility because they thought Alzheimer's, that's it. So they did that. They put him in a nursing facility, if you will. And what happened? In the nursing facility, the story so goes on, he got to meet other people, and he got to meet a young, well, I guess young for him, a woman, and he fell in love. He got romantically involved. And so what happened? They started watching movies and sharing their life together. And as time went on, they signed themselves out from the nursing facility. They got a place to live. And as it turned out to be, he didn't have Alzheimer's. What was it? He had depression. And depression sometimes can seem like Alzheimer's because, people with Alzheimer's or people with depression don't really care about what's happening and don't really respond to people. And so sometimes people miss that, especially doctors who are not mental health specialists might miss that. Might say that the person does have Alzheimer's. So that's one good news, that we could buy and look at this, that they might have a lesser dangerous thing happening in their life. So depression is not that it's good, but it's definitely better than having Alzheimer's, right? And so I think that's part of it. Okay. The other thing that does happen is that people that are older sometimes fall and hurt themselves for reasons that, you know, the muscles in your legs are not as strong, your hands and your balance is not as good, especially as you get a lot much more mature in the 80s and so on. So people might hit their head. Okay. So if they hit their head, they may get what's called a subdural hematoma. And what that is that when I hit my head, like I bang my head somewhere, even if minor, I might hit my head, I have a blood clot. Now that also mimics itself as something that could be akin to Alzheimer's. And so the good news about that is that we ought to make sure that we eliminate what we think it's Alzheimer's and to see if it's something like that. So if I were to hit my head and I would get a blood clot, that elevates the pressure in my mind, in my brain. And if you discover that that's what it is, all they do is stick a simple needle into wherever that area is, and they suck it out, if you will. They take it out, and voila, I no longer have so-called Alzheimer's. Okay, so I wanted to suggest to you that we should look for ways to X out things that could be seen as that happening. The other thing that also does tend to happen with people that get um, uh, seen as having Alzheimer's is that they might have had a lot of mini strokes. Okay, so mini strokes that happen to people um, potentially could, because there's damages throughout, might be considered as Alzheimer's. So though that's not a great thing, it's good to be able to know that it might not be that. And so what happens with some of these things is that they um, may they might burst, they might coagulate. I might have aneurysms in your mind. These are coagulations that happen in my brain and sometimes in my neck, and they might travel. Okay, so that's part of Alzheimer's, and we might be able to deal with these embolisms, as they're called. Okay, okay, they're small, and if they're small enough, they could be dispensed with by giving medication that in some way dissipates them. Okay, and doctors know about that. Okay, other things that look like Alzheimer's to people are little brain tumors. Okay, okay, so some areas in the brain develop brain tumors that could be benign and could be addressed. Another thing that often is misunderstood as Alzheimer's is called hypothyroidism. Okay, it's a thyroid situation that is serious, but it isn't that. It's handled by giving a certain medication to people, and then if you discover any of these situations early on, you can handle them and you can give them the appropriate intervention to help them. Okay, all right. So any questions about some of that trying to shed some positive light on Alzheimer's and how we might look at it as that it's not always Alzheimer's, it could be something else that's really happening. Okay, and that we should try to eliminate it. And people that are caregivers don't often know this, and doctors don't know this. Okay. I see that my computer's has a picture of me. Are you guys seeing me there? Anybody? Can you see me?
I think you have two screens. One shows
Right,
you and one.
can you see me?
Yeah,
Oh, as long as you can see me in one of them.
yeah.
I did two screens because I wasn't sure how my new computer was going to work. So, but you can see me. You can see me right now?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, good, good, good. All right, all right. So I want to talk about alcohol, okay? Because alcohol is definitely another thing that is a problem to the elderly, okay? And why do older people drink? Why would you think that they would drink?
Stressed.
Yeah, yeah, and they feel out. They feel like I no longer matter. And, I feel depressed. Let me, depressed in quotes. I need to do something to help myself feel better. And so alcohol tends to inhibit, um, you know, feelings and sort of make you feel a little bit better, as we all know that those of us who have drank alcohol know that. Okay, well, alcohol is definitely a problem that also I'll say is a problem to the elderly, but also could be seen as a potential Alzheimer's disease. If you drink too much alcohol, it actually does hurt the brain and actually does hurt the body, the heart, if you will, in some ways. Okay. So I wanted to say a little bit about that. There are a lot of programs to help people with not just Alzheimer's, but alcoholism. If you are addicted to alcohol, you want that taken care of, if you will. And there are a lot of groups. The Alcohol Anonymous are found almost everywhere. You Google Alcohol Anonymous, and you'll be able to find groups within less than 5 miles away from wherever you're at. It's one of the biggest uh, volunteer groups that exists. So there really are or is no real reason for people not getting some help if they think they are or are becoming an alcoholic. And alcoholism is a problem because it does stop you from doing many things, and you tend to get weaker. And alcoholism also tends to make your face look kind of yellowish, even more yellow. Um, it tends to also make you weaker, eat up your proteins, if you will. So alcoholism, we actually license alcohol counselors in most of the nation. People that study counseling get a credential as an alcohol counselor. So we have enough people to take care of that, if you will, if you want it. All right. The other thing that people that are aging also is a problem is something called polypharmacy. Does anyone know what polypharmacy might be? You've heard of it? No? No? Okay. Well, polypharmacy really is that people take many medications. On average, people that are aging take between 6 and 7 pharmaceuticals, okay? And sometimes they go to different doctors and they get different ones from different doctors. When my father-in-law was alive, he was a piece of work, if you will. And when he didn't like what one doctor said, guess what? he went to someone else. And that doctor didn't know that he was being medicated, and he would give them medicine, some comparable and some not. And he would have a whole list. So he would have a menagerie of medicines. And some people, not all people, but some people do that. And some people take medication that they shouldn't be taking. And so they don't often tell the doctor what they're taking. And they might even take medication that's natural, like herbs and things like that are found in nature, if you will. They might buy them at a naturalistic store. And some of those conflict with the pharmaceuticals that are created to take care of certain things. So polypharmacy sometimes not only does it hurt people, but some people think some people have Alzheimer's like diseases that come through some of the disease. Okay, so that's another thing that might do that. The naturalistic medicines also tend to interrupt. So one of the things that caregivers and you should know is that if you're taking some sort of naturalistic medicine and you are taking other medicine, you should tell your physician that you're taking naturalistic medicine and have a list of that. Most people do not do that. And so the doctor doesn't know what you are taking. And so there can be contra effects, if you will. Okay. Another thing that happens with the elderly is malnutrition. If you are not feeling well, or you're feeling weak or something, why cook? All right. And so you may not be cooking for yourself. So I mentioned early on that we should all, as we get older, take multivitamins. And that's because multivitamins can help us bring the good stuff from the food we eat and enhance the intake and the absorption of nutrition into our body if we take them. Okay, because we don't get as good nutrition as we really do need. We do really need a whole lot better than what we eat. Okay, and I'll tell you one thing. Though physicians mean well, they're not good on nutrition. They don't study up on it as much, and they just ask rudimentary questions. Is how's you eating? Are you eating well? You know, and they only care about if you're not doing well in terms of eating, if your stomach is acting up or you have some sort of other problems. Anyway, other things that elderly face up is emphysema, where you can't breathe well and you need oxygen. And so you might need to have oxygen given to you. Other things that happen is the kidneys stop working well. And so that's something that should be looked at periodically. You get viruses and fungi that people don't know about. Okay. Carbon monoxide and environmental pollutants also affect everyone, and especially the elderly, especially if they live in areas where these things are not handled. All right. So we know that, just kind of going back to Alzheimer's, that there's something called Alzheimer's disease associated poetry. Okay, mental health specialists attempt to look at if this could really be Alzheimer's or not Alzheimer's. Okay, so those are things that are being done, but we are not close to being able to help with Alzheimer's as much as we would like to help. All right. So I was saying something about alcohol. Alcohol it is something that hurts people. When we know that if you can reduce Alzheimer's and you can reduce it by doing some of the things that we've been talking about, or the onset, pushing it into the future, which is the best case scenario, we are in good shape. And speaking of good shape, I mentioned exercise and walking and all that. There was a study that reminded me just now of that use rats. I know you're thinking rats. What does that have to do with aging? Well, rats are used in psychology to study things that could potentially be helpful to the human condition and enhancing the human condition. And in this case, I think it's true. One of the things that they did with a series of two groups, a control group and a non-control group. In one group, they gave the rats toys to play with. They gave them good nutrition and so on like that. And when they did that, they discovered that the rats that had that were more creative, if you will, in how they led their life. They could run mazes faster and better, and they could problem solve, if you will, mazes a little bit better. So that exercise and eating well is good for rodents. It's also good for human beings, if you will. Okay, so I wanted to say that about that. Okay, all right. Stress. Haven't talked about stress much, but cortisol is the chemical that the hippocampus creates and is found in our brain. When we are stressed out, it's because we really think that something is really a problem to us. And so a fellow named Albert Ellis invented a therapeutic approach called rational emotive therapy. And what he discovered is that most of us catastrophize and create realities that are worse than they really are. And sometimes we are facing a serious problem. But he believes, and he's a fellow who said that rational emotive therapy can help by opening up the avenues in which you speak about your problems, and people that are in the helping field challenge those notions in a kind way by pointing out how it's not as bad. And for example, he says that most of us say, everyone must love me, everything must go well in my life, I must not have any problems, things should go well all the time for me. And he says that those are irrational things, that life isn't quite like that, but that we tend to say, oh, my life is the worst, and I have problems that are insurmountable and that I can't do anything about. And so rational emotive therapy is a humanistic existentialist approach to airing out those things and to helping people talk. So talking, I guess, is one thing I'm suggesting. And staying engaged and connected with others is helpful to the aging process, so that we're able to age a little bit better, if you will. Okay, so I wanted to say a little bit about that. Okay, all right. So let me see how much time I still have to chat with you guys. I want to talk briefly before I close, unless someone has any questions. No? Oh, okay, so I'm gonna talk a little bit, a couple of minutes about cancer, okay? Because I think that's an important thing, okay? So we don't know why cancer exists, okay, and why it comes up. We do know that there's some DNA relationship in terms of tumors and what have you. It is the second worst disease, if you will. People are really fearful of Alzheimer's, but you mentioned cancer, and people are almost that way. Cancer is a disease of people that are older, if you will, generally speaking, though we all can get it. About 550,000 people get cancer every year. 55% is the lungs, the colon, the rectum, breast cancer, and prostate. Okay. The good thing about this is that we've discovered medications for skin cancer. There are about 60 medications, 59 for breast, 42 for lung, for leukemia 35, for ovarian cancer 33, and for head and neck cancers 18%. Okay, so we're making some good headways of this. Most of the cancers don't become metastasized, or they tend to in some way not travel, if you will. Okay, it's important to get screened. Elderly people often don't think about cancer and don't get screened, or are of the mindset that it's hopeless to get screened for this, and I'm too old, that kind of stuff. Okay, so I'm saying this to you because I think those of you that work with elderly will find out that they might get skin diseases, cancers, and they may not get screened, if you will. So I wanted to mention that. We don't know why people get cancer. There's probably a genetic component to it. But we've gotten quite a bit better at diagnosing it. And nowadays, someone says that the doctor tells you have a certain cancer, it is likely that you can get some sort of treatment or push it into the future so that it doesn't affect you as much. But elderly people do not often get screened for it. So that's one of the screenings that I think is important to do. All right. Any other questions? Didn't want to say too much about that because that's all I really want to say about that. The book talks a little bit about the medications and how they're handled, and talks about Alzheimer's and talks about depression and things like that. These are all things that we ought to keep in our mind, if you will. Okay. Any questions? No. Is this not a good time for most people, you think, to meet? I'm trying to come up with a good time for most of you. It looks like I got 4 this time. I'm gonna suggest to you, I got this book. This is an interesting book, and I'm gonna close on that. It's called Live Now, Age Later. The doctor is Isidore Rosenfeld, MD. He wrote this book some years back. If you're able to find this book and get it, it's a easy read, and it actually talks a lot about the different things on aging. And I found it helpful for myself. Um, and I just wanted to suggest it to you as a possible read. Proving what ways to slow down the clock. is his subtitle. Okay, and it's published by Warner Books. Okay, I have an older version, and so I thought that maybe some of you might be that interested. You could look that up on one of the websites. All right. Are there any questions or anything that you want to say, those of you that are online with me, before I sign out?
No questions.
Okay. And you're able to see me?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So I'll try to, if this works well, then I will have a link for you so that you, if you want to review what we talked about, you can do that. Okay. I might change the date in which we meet again, just to see if a different date might yield more people. I know you're taking an online course. You don't necessarily want to meet at any one time. I understand that. So for most people. All right. I hope that you're enjoying the course. I hope you are enjoying the book. I think the book is pretty good. Gets technical, if you will. I hope that you're enjoying the activities that I think will help you learn long-term wise. That's really what I'm learning. I'm looking to do is what could students do that are learning about this long-term so they don't forget these things or the important things. All right. Most of you are doing great. I mean, really, I am thumbs up on you. And I think you've offered some really good write-ups and some good insightful writings. Okay. All right. If there's nothing else, then I'm going to sign out. Okay. Is that good?
Have a good one.
All right. And I'll probably not have one next week. I'll probably have it the week after that, another Zoom meeting. I'll probably change the date and time and do it a little bit different. So that it might be a little bit different. Maybe I'll do it earlier in the day. I don't know. I don't know if that works for. At least this time works for 4 of you. All right. Thank you. And I appreciate you connecting with me, and continue to learn, and I hope that you continue to enjoy the course. All right. Thank you. Bye now.